All right, we are back for another episode, and the long-awaited September 1st conversation is here. So we obviously have the experience to have been on many sides, I think, of the sort of recruiting world, both on our own journeys, which was much different than what the world looks like now, from a variety of ways, from social media to rules to all kinds of things. I've coached teams where I've sort of like helped with that. And then obviously to our athletes and the college coaches we work with. And so, I think for us, just kind of going through some of the reflections we have about people's experiences, maybe some of the misconceptions, I think, of what this like September 1st means and should mean. And, we've talked about this in a variety of ways, recruiting, and obviously we're not experts on it. Everyone's journey is different, but I think just, to talk through some of our reflections and maybe advice or sort of things that we've seen. But I think maybe I'll just start, and I kind of referenced this when we first, a few weeks ago, said we were going to talk about September 1st. We have just now are getting there. But I think what has been interesting to me is there are so many instances where a kid is not in the top 10 to 20 recruits in the country and puts a emphasis and weight on September 1st that feels very sort of like misproportional to reality, meaning they haven't really spoken directly to coaches. Their travel ball coach hasn't spoken directly to coaches. They don't have any sort of direct confirmation outside of like camp invites or things like that, direct confirmation that they are being looked at by a certain set of schools, but they have this expectation that on September 1st, they'll figure out then what happens. And they think that like, I'm going to get phone calls and then I'll know who's watching me. And I think from our standpoint, while college coaches certainly can't speak directly to you or offer money or, there's a lot of rules, they can confirm sort of interest directly to someone. And so for the most case, those kids that we're talking about September 1st being a moment where they get an offer or, something comes out of it is really this very top tier of kid in that class. And that kid is probably very aware of the large majority of schools that are going to reach out to them that day. There might be some surprises. There might be a school that they didn't know was going to call. There might be a school they thought was going to who doesn't for a variety of reasons. Maybe they were a little further down the list than they thought, but there's not like, I had no idea. And then these 5 schools called me. And so I think that there is just a little bit of overemphasis on September 1st for most kids. And what September 1st is for the large majority of kids outside of that very top tier of kid is just the start of when you can communicate with coaches. Like it really is just like the start of when you can speak directly to a coach at the Division I level. Like I think, and so for a lot of kids, like, we have had, and I know it's stressful for kids, but we have had plenty of kids that have come into that time period behind, that means for a variety of reasons. They were injured or they are a late bloomer and they are now climbing quickly up the rank of skill, but were later to the scene because of when they developed, who end up at the same level eventually, if that's where they should play. And September 1st wasn't some deadline that they actually had to meet, even if that school committed other kids or that school's at that level. It took a little longer. It might have felt a little more stressful, but I think if you are good enough to play at that level, at this like very top level, you will play at that top level. I think this is the reality. Like there is enough information out there to like find that. And I think this like overemphasis. So that's just kind of my take on things. And it's hard and it's like, everyone's doing their best. This is not like people should feel bad, but it is always hard for me when someone's like, well, just see what happens on September 1st. We're waiting for September 1st. Like she's so excited about September 1st. You see all these kids on like Twitter, like tomorrow's the day we've all been waiting for. It's like, that's not what that day is for most people. And so I think that that's just something that is important. It's not a deadline. You don't have to be your best self by that day. It's like, that's just not what it's for. I think that there's some world where I would say, are we doing it right? And I think they've been trying to change rules. Like, is September 1st of junior year the right day? Because it does put almost this like because we still haven't changed how we think about recruiting. So still these schools are racing, some of them, to offer kids right around September 1st. And so like, should we start talking to them in the summer so kids can have a little bit more breather between time of when they start speaking to people to offer, so we all don't think it's this like rush that year. And I think there's some questions about some of that, but I think that's the biggest thing I see, is that it is a day for some people. It's a very, very small percentage of people where that like day is what we make it out to be. And it really, for most people, is just the date at which Division I coaches can speak directly to you and offer you financial packages. And that's really all it is. And I think that's important for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think the current setup of September 1st and what the culture around it is terrible. And I think it's terrible on both sides. So it definitely, as you said, Krista, it has turned into like an expiration date.
Yeah. Oh, good one. Good one. Yeah. Good word.
That's hard for me to look at, because we're like, we live in the world of player development. I'm like, I don't know how else to say this, like Johnny, the dad. Your daughter is 16, right? And the version of her that will even like exist in college is, she's not even like halfway there yet. So what she needs is time. And so September 1st has really turned into this, like, if you don't perform at your absolute max by your sophomore year when you're 16 years old, then basically like all your recruiting dreams are over. That script is horrible. Like, a 16-year-old, are there a percentage of athletes where their skill level is or where they are developmentally, you can already see like it's not that risky to bring them on, right? Like you can kind of see like, I already know they're going to pan out at this level. There is a giant pool of athletes who are not currently reflecting what it looks like to play at University XYZ, but will get there with time. And so this is where data matters. This is where the ability to like see youth data to bridge the gap, to start to see what someone's tapping into, what her trends are looking like, understanding where she is developmentally. This is where when we have conversations with coaches individually, it's not just like, she's got a great drop ball. It's like, hey, here's where she is developmentally. Late bloomer, needs to gain 15 pounds. Probably is going to be able to throw X miles per hour in this many years. Now, is it a gamble to go for that? Yes. But if we started to have more information about these athletes, then all of the country wouldn't be racing and trying to chase the same 10 pitchers, because you would see there's actually this giant pool that's not there yet, but we can really, 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 start to say who we believe is like this high likelihood that this athlete's going to be there in 2 to 3 years. And that's really what it needs to start looking at. So I think it's been hard for me generally to watch even like OGX pitchers, parents who fully are in this like growth, watching trends, letting it pan out over time. And then as soon as the pressure of September 1st comes around, and I'm not being critical, I know it just comes from the pressure of like travel ball and the external world. But as soon as the September 1st conversation comes in, they will abandon all sense of like, they'll see their athlete is growing, trends are going up, she's getting better. But if September 1st doesn't pan out, it's instantly like, we failed. It's over. Yeah. Like, but all trends are saying she's continuing to be on the up. You know what I mean?
I think the hard part of those conversations kind of bridge this gap between college and high school is that, I've been at the center and we still are in some ways with our OGX athletes, but when I was coaching the team, I was at the center of a lot of these conversations and bridging the gap between the families and colleges. And what is not great in this world where performance data isn't at least part of the conversation. It's not, and we always say like, it's not the whole thing. Like if a kid throws hard and like something, whatever is exceptional or has a really hard exit velocity, but then you go watch her in games and she's an asshole or she has performance anxiety or whatever. Of course, there's things in the field you need to see happen. So this isn't like training data should be your determiner. No one is saying that. So I think that's just clear. And I think when people take it to mean that's what we're saying, that like literally misunderstands a large part of what we do. But I think that there is this world where when I was on that side, sometimes the college coaches, it didn't make any sense what they were saying. They're like, she's this, she's that. And you're like,
no, they're not.
No, they're not.
Right.
And so then all of a sudden that kid and that family starts chasing things. For instance, like we need you to be able to throw up in the zone. It's like, no, you don't. That kid doesn't do that. And also we know that she doesn't need to do that. So you might say, we need an up ball kid and you are not that, but like, that's whatever. But this idea of like grabbing random things, you know, I had a kid that I was helping, and like she would go to camp and they're like, we need her to be faster on defense. And I was like, I actually don't like, one, like the upside of her is, yeah, it's not defense, but also like, I'm not sure that's ever like been feedback. And then it's like the next time she went, they were like, you know, she did great on defense, but now we need like, she didn't quite do this. I'm like, how am I supposed to give that feedback to the athlete? For one, from my standpoint at this point in the OGX world, we're not going to sell a kid that we don't think actually has the skill set to play at that level, because part of what makes us who we are is sort of like an actual understanding of what scales at the next level. And so if we're misrepresenting that in some way with our athletes, that's not super helpful to anyone. It's not helpful to the athlete. It's not helpful to the coach. And so there is this level sometimes where I'm trying to talk to the coach about sort of like real. These are the real things that she can do. These are the real holes that she currently has. These are the real things it feels like it could go. And of course, you need to go watch that in a game and see how it pans out, or if that fits your mold or your culture. And there's all kinds of things that go into it. And then they're coming back with just like, and a lot of it is because the way camps are structured, they're not measuring any of that. It's just they want the kid to come to a camp, for instance, to see if they're fit. And then they're just in like these stations, and they just like happen to see a station where it didn't pan out the way they wanted to or something. So I just think it's, when we're trying to bridge this gap, the power of data and sort of understanding what is successful and really being able to bridge this gap is when we know what works at the top level. And if that's what you're shooting for, you can really start to have some honest conversations of how close to that are you? Are you already there? So, there's the kids you're talking about who are like, okay, they're the top 1%. They're the, I always think of like Abby Wambach, because I've like heard her talk. She was like the best soccer player from age 4. She's a phenom. Like, and that does exist. There's not no kids like that. We've talked about
Also,
Katie Stewart.
Like
Katie Stewart was
a great change up. It's just like
right.
Gonna scale. You know
right,
what I mean?
Yeah,
like seriously. Yeah.
Yeah. You just have these things. So there are certainly kids like that, but the large majority of kids, even that ultimately end up at that top level of Division I, are in this bucket right under that. And I think what we're saying is, that bucket is bigger than you think. It's bigger than you think. And also, everyone that's going to be in that bucket is not there necessarily September 1st of their junior year. They might be right under that bucket. And we can see that they're going to come up because they're a late bloomer, because they're whatever. They haven't understand it themselves, or there's a whole variety of things. And I think that conversation has to become a little bit more where we're not speaking different languages and where we're like trying to do things, because I think that's where the chaos comes from the families, is they're being told, well, it's because she's not doing this. It's because she doesn't do this. It's because she, whatever. And they're all random subjective things that sometimes we know just from the college coaches, they're saying to be nice. And I also think like, stop doing that. Like, that's not helpful either.
Not helpful.
That's what I was going to say, Krista. Like, as you were talking, what I kept thinking was, isn't this just the opposite side of the lesson model? Where in the lesson model, you have to give the kid this, like, you're doing great, but I've also got to give you something to work on for next time so that you come back. And I think like the camp concept is, we hear some, I won't say random feedback. There's definitely a pattern to it, but we hear feedback that our kids will get from camps that is so, it feels arbitrary. It's like your spin rates have to go up, and it's like, on what pitch? Why? Like, give me a reason why you're giving that pitcher that sort of just default feedback. And I feel like there's some of this kind of crossover between this lesson model. I've got to, I have to sort of pull the strings of the kid to get her to do what I want her to do. And, it's got to be positive and verbal cues. And then the camp concept is kind of an extension of that. It's like, well, I have to give her a reason. If I don't say yes right away, then I have to give an excuse as to why. And it could just simply be, you're not there yet. It's like that part of the conversation of like, hey, we have team-based metrics. This is what our bat speed needs to be on our team. You're not there yet, right? So instead of a random piece of feedback of your defense needs to get faster, tell her where she should improve. Requires measuring, having some sense of performance standards, for your team. And so I think they're at the levels of the college game where that technology is baked into their camps now. They're measuring things on their stadium units and Rapsodo, and even measuring sprint times or vertical jump height, whatever it might be. At least there's some objective criteria. And again, I think of like, if I'm a parent and I'm an athlete and I'm spending my money and my time and I'm missing school for things and I'm giving my capacity in that way, and I need the feedback. I should want the feedback for what I'm spending on that
Harvard
camp.
with a 22 ACT, man.
Right.
Yeah.
I
was going to say the defense thing is interesting to me because the actual conversation is you're not quite there on defense, and we are not willing to take that on because
exactly
hitting is not enough. Because the other thing that is tough about that is that same kid is going to look at someone at that level with the same level of defense and be like, wait, what? Like I see this. And so there is now that, maybe this case that really I just know the example in my head. I know it's like, there are people that play at that level with the same defensive skills as this kid. And so it's like, what you're actually saying is that in some cases, we're willing to take that trade-off and we are not for you because XYZ. Like that's the real conversation. I think it was frustrating. And now we're like kind of calling out college coaches a little bit, but it's both. There's so many sides to this. It's not calling out anyone, but I think what's frustrating is that we then see those same college coaches like, she can't take honest feedback. It's like, well, no one gave it to her ever.
You didn't give it to her. I'd say that's wrong. Like, no one gave it to her. Correct. Right.
I think it's like we've never learned how to do that. And so there's a reality of like, clear.
Also, the college coaches won't see the data. They might at their camp, but they have a billion campers and they have no system to necessarily. They're just the ones that are already there will stand out to them. This idea of like growth over time, what tools are on the edge.
And it's why you should, and it's why I think as athletes, it's so powerful to be in these systems with data and understanding, like, how does this match up to where I'm trying to go? What is the path? How far off am I to that? What is the likelihood I can close that gap? What does that look like? And then just staying on that path. And I think this, like, I think we still live in a world where people are like, well, I'm here, I'm in player development, and that means I can get up here. It's like, that's also not what player development is, to just say like, you can randomly jump 42 levels, because there's a lot of things that go into that. So it's understanding what's kind of like at each of those tiers, having really honest conversations, believing in your ability to keep ticking up tiers. That we certainly do within reasonable understanding of how you accomplish that and what it's going to look like. And just, that's what it's about. And then the rest comes. And I think like, that's the reality. The rest comes. You don't need to be in this chaos. Like, I think the more people can just try to pull themselves under, I understand why it feels that way, but it's like, for most people, it's just like, be good enough for the level you're trying to go to. And
know what it means to be good enough for the level.
Right. Yes. Right. Maybe at some point the conversation is you're not. And so let's also be able to have that conversation of just like, not everyone plays Division I Power 4 softball. That is the reality. Like, that's not everyone's journey. You're not going to, if we had a player development system where we said every single person that walked in our door, if they follow our systems, they're going to be that good, we would be incredible and magicians. And so that's just not reality. So there is some conversation where people need to say, that's not going to be realistic for you. And here is why, not just randomly because, you're not performing in travel ball. It's not always that simple either, but these are the things of why. And then for you as an athlete to be in the driver's seat of, I actually am good enough, or I'm very close to being good enough, but my path might not have looked the same as everyone else. I might not have played on the big name travel team since I was 12 and went sort of up these ranks, or I might have got my period sophomore year of high school. I'm a really late bloomer and I know this is where I am, or whatever the reason for that might be, but you want to be in the driver's seat of that. And for all the things we say, it's like, you want to be in the driver's seat of that, because even when you go to college, you want to be in the driver's seat of that. Like, you don't know if that coach is going to stay. You don't know if that coach has the systems that they say they do, or is going to be able to support you in the way that they say you do. You might want to transfer eventually. You might not like it for a variety of reasons. Like, there's so many reasons to get in the driver's seat and be in the driver's seat. And recruiting is just another opportunity where sometimes I think we like give that away to people, whether it's our travel ball coach or the sort of rules of college. And we just let, like, we just let that take the reign instead of controlling it in our family and with our players. And I think that's where we just see things like the pressure gets so high, and it's just like, this is not, for a variety of reasons, we need to help manage that. It's just like, this is just a tiny microcosm for life. And if we're freaking out that much about the recruiting thing not going the way that we want it to, it's just like, it's just hard, to watch people go through that.
And that data is really about, from my perspective anyway, that data is really about a judgment of potential. It's not like that coach is expecting you to show up on campus September 2nd and make an impact. You have 2 years.
Yeah. And if the coach is expecting that, yeah. But I was going to say, if they are, and you are a kid, that goes back to the point where you're like, player development, I know my potential can get me here because I'm educated on it and I see that potential. Then instead of being mad that coach is like, you're not there yet, and therefore you want you to be like, thank you for letting me know this is not going to be a fit for me either. And
newsflash, not every university takes a player development approach. They're like, we're going to pluck this kid as is. That's how we're going to use their end of story. And guess what? That's their damn prerogative. They're allowed to do that. That's not a fit for a lot of athletes, no matter how good that school is. So there's some element to that of like, they need you to be where you like, they need to see right now at 16 years old that you look like that. And there are some athletes that fit that model.
Right. And you're right, Krista. Like you should say, thank you so much. I appreciate that, because the judgment of potential means that there is a gap between where you are now and some perceived benchmark. If a coach tells you your potential, we see it, but you're not quite there yet, means that they know what that threshold is. And they are being very clear with you of, here's the growth that you have to go. I agree. It's like, thank you so much. I appreciate the feedback. This may not also be a mutual fit. But that's hard. Rejection is hard. And I appreciate that. Rejection's hard.
What Krista is saying is those conversations aren't had because how would college coaches have a conversation? You're not there yet. On what specifically? They don't really know. It's not their fault. It's just like basically the inefficiency of the system. It kills everyone because it also kills the college coaches. They finish their seasons in May. They're on the road the entire summer showing up to the same teams. And
they're exhausted.
All day. That's terrible. They spend their whole fall going after this like wheel and deal when they're trying to create a new culture and new team and grow their own athletes.
And trying to implement player development in the fall, but they're so stuck in the recruiting. Oh my gosh, right.
I think the idea of it is that the current system of recruiting, including the summer, how we recruit and how coaches watch games and watch 85,000, even though they already know what they're looking at, they got to still show up because if they don't show up, then the kid thinks they're not interested. Like all of that, all the way to the September 1st thing, all the way to the like, you get all your visits done within a 4-week time period.
The way that you then get watched in the fall too.
Right. Like, all of this is like, it is a system that is only built for the very, very small, and I'm going to pull a number out of my ass because I actually don't know, but 3% of athletes, right?
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe 1 to 3%, that it's like, we're all fighting over. Lefty with the changeup. Kid throws 70. Like these kids are like has it the nastiest rise ball we've ever seen. Like there are kids out there like that. The whole system is built around that athlete. And you know what? It's a fine system for them. Go play all summer. People will go and watch your games and make you all feel whatever. And they'll call you and they'll give you their best deals. And then you'll decide where you want to go. And the reality is the system is horrible for everyone else. They are 16 years old. There is no sense of what do they actually have? Like, yes, it's not panning out on the field, but what do they actually have? Is that, how close are they to being scalable to me? And there's a gigantic pool. And that's actually where the majority of schools should be living. And they have no information. So this inefficiency of the system, I think it just kills everyone. And the first step, as what we talked about at Pitch Doc, you've got to bridge the gap between high school and college or travel ball and college by getting the data out there. You have to see, what does it mean to scale at my level? There's a lot of different ways to do it. It doesn't only look like one thing. Is she pretty close actually? And the kid's 16, not 25.
Right.
It's like, that's the expiration date. Like everyone get a clue. These kids at 16, I don't really want to talk about the Phillies, but it's coming in my head. So I'm going to say it anyway, is that they were doing an interview like a week or two ago, basically like, what was your recruiting process like? It was like dog shit for half the guys on the team.
Right.
I got recruited by the University of No Man's Land. You know what I mean? And they're MLB players because they were 16 years old.
Right.
So there's some element where it's just like, we have to not only see data, but not only just data as it is right now, but data meaning like, what does it look like to be good at my level? Where is that athlete? How close or far away is that? And then you can ask somebody of like, what do you think? Do you think she could fill that gap? Is she doing the right thing? So I think there's a world where like, we might sound like we're living in some fairy tale, like it could look like this. It could look like this.
It could look like that.
Crazy. So I think that's one thing. I think the other major barrier is this whole like, you know, travel ball, like I want to die every time we talk about travel ball. And I know that's like, whatever, let's set Facebook on fire here now. But like, this is a major problem. This idea that the team you play for. Now, we're not saying you don't have to be at higher levels of competition or whatever. But this idea, if I go on this team and attach to this dude, then that's going to get it done. No, it won't. So I think there's just this element of like, then the teams push for this September 1st because it's like that team's credentials now become a part of this, like how many of our kids went on September 1st? Like no one gives a shit. You know what I mean?
Right.
Literally forget who you play for. Be on a team that plays a decent level of national competition, understands growth and not that everyone should be set in stone and at their max at 16, 17 years old, and take your development into your own hands. That is the number one thing that I would say, because as soon as it gets to the travel ball level, it's like literally when college coaches are like, I talked to her travel ball coach, and in my head, I'm like, and this isn't fair. It's not like all travel ball coaches are terrible, whatever. I'm like, for the majority of athletes they have on their team, they don't know shit. And it's like, it's not their fault, but they don't know shit for that athlete. And I'm not saying it's a bad coach or it's a bad whatever. They don't have the information. They don't know what it looks like to be good at your level. They don't know what it looks like, what that kid actually throws.
Well, in the top
gap is to get her there. Like, why is the travel ball coach the person that we think is going to tell us whether or not she can fill the gap?
Well,
because it's not.
Well, it's just, it's the same. Travel ball is the same system as what we're talking about. It works for the very top level. And so these top teams are doing exactly the same thing at 14, 16, 18U. They're taking all the best players because the best players want to play each other. They said they want to go at this top level. And then all of a sudden we make it about recruiting, which it sort of is, but it's like, it's not hard to get those kids recruited. You're coaching the best kids in the country.
Sure.
So there's 10 in the country that have the top 1% that we're talking about. And so then the whole journey, what travel ball looks like, what the recruiting looks like, the whole journey is being dictated by those 10 teams and those 1% of athletes. And that's just not the reality for everyone else. So it's like, then you have everyone else that's right under that. So the team I coached, I would say, is right under that. We were able to compete a lot of times with those teams. We had many athletes who could probably play at that level, but it was not as clear. They were not the top 1%. They had to do more work to get there. You had to see what they were. So my conversations had to be more about, and at that time when I was coaching, it was even harder because we were further removed from that data. But my conversations had to be about, this is why she could be successful. This is the role she could play. This is how it's surprising to everyone that we can walk onto fields and compete with these teams. And that is what we're saying for the majority. When you are not the top 1% of college team also,
right,
you should be having those same conversations because you're not going to get most of those kids, and you are trying to figure out what the tier is. And then it's like, we're all built for that. And so now we start funneling kids into that, this is just going all into it, but then we start funneling kids into that system at 12. And they get into some belief that this is
Jersey says class of 3048.
Yeah.
Just like, what the hell?
And that is on some promise that this journey is straight linear.
It's linear, exactly.
Like, this is not reality. So I think there's the thing of like, this isn't to trash everything. I think there's a world where we say it's perfectly fine that the top 1 to 3% of athlete plays on the same 10 teams, that those same 10 teams compete for the national championship, that we teach those kids to be
like they're getting drafted.
Yes, if that's the goal, then that's fine. But the problem is when the conversation is entirely led and centered on that experience, when the large majority of athletes are not going through that experience. They are not, and we have convinced them that they are. And that's where they'll like, we'll wait till September 1st rolls around. It's like, that's not
It's like
not
what
what's
we have
going to
said
happen.
with the college level. It's like this, power 4 level, and probably not even the entire power 4 level, but there's this,
No, absolutely not.
obviously, but like there's this top layer of the college world where it's like it's professional softball now, basically, right? I mean, that's what it is. So the recruiting system now, it's a draft.
That's right.
It's a draft for that level. And so how about everyone else, college wise and athlete wise, this 95 to 97, 98% of people, again, schools and athletes, needs its own system for literally like a normal, like recruiting. How do you then play in college? Like this lack of separation, even at the college level of like what it means to play in college is literally be like a professional in college. That's also kind of feeding into it.
Yeah. And the exciting thing, I think, for, exciting but different and scary for some is that there you can transfer with no restrictions, basically, at this point. And so there's an element of, it's why these questions, all the way back to what you were saying, Laura, and we were kind of reacting to, of like, I am in this tier right under that, but I do understand and know what my trajectory might look like if I get in the right system and I keep going up. I can keep chasing this like next best version of myself, and I'm 4 steps off of being able to compete at a higher level. Then you can go and in the right system, see if I could go play at a slightly lower level than that, and I am developed and I could want to go up. And I think it's not that that's everyone's journey. And I don't think that you should go to school and be like, I'm for sure just using the school to transfer. You have no idea what's going to happen there. So you should find a fit. But I do think
you might need time.
Right. You might need time. And I think it's okay also, and why we shouldn't all talk at the same system. For me as a mid-major coach, to be okay with that possibly being my role in the game, where I am developing athletes, surprising some people maybe, because I know how to recruit at that level. And I think of it as what my team looked like. Could you be right under that at the mid-major level and all of a sudden be like, wait, how the hell did that team beat that team? And you get fed some kids like that. And yes, maybe some of those kids will leave because you were able to develop them and now they want to go compete. And I think like, that's okay. Like we can all have our roles in this sort of like system. And I think, that's the real problem. I think as we kind of worded it is that there's just, we don't need data. You do once you get to college, but you don't need data and understanding for the top 1% in travel ball. It's just like, got it. Yep. She's good.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. I don't need to see how hard she hits it. She obviously hits it
I would
hard.
like to know the differential for that lefty's change up, her velo differential. No one cares. Everyone swings and misses.
Yeah, she's good. Yeah. And so there's just the reality that we don't need to learn that language or how to talk about that or how to show them how to get to the next step for those. But the 98% of the rest of the kids, we do need that language for. And that's what we're saying. We need to close that gap. It's like, we're not, yes, you walk onto the field and see the top 17-year-old in the country and you're like, got it. I see it. I don't need to see what her data is. So I think that's the reality. And that's the gap we're trying to close. And those are the people that are kind of like losing it in this process and getting lost in the shuffle. And they're also the coaches who need kids like that, who are getting lost in the shuffle. And I think that's really what we're talking about. And I think that there's a lot that data, and we're not just saying like, go get data on the kids, but yes, go get data on the kids here. The kids should have it on themselves, but also this understanding of all of the different ways at the different levels kids can be successful in college, so that now as a college coach, I have a better understanding of what am I looking for. That doesn't just determine by how they perform on a field with my eyeballs.
I think the main message that I would want to say here is like families, parents, for everyone that thinks something like failed in your daughter's recruiting process, nothing failed in her process, nothing failed in her journey. That process just isn't for her, right? Like what we are saying is not for most people. Most athletes should be deciding where they're going into their senior year.
Yeah.
That summer going into their senior year is really when most athletes should be deciding. Honestly, I even think the fall of their senior year, right? Like it's that summer into fall, it's where most athletes, it's like, listen, you're still going to keep developing and growing, but this is like right up to the edge of where we can decide. That's the actual timeline. So I think for like, when I was giving those examples of people are seeing like trends are up, she did great this summer, all of a sudden though, but September 1st didn't turn out. And all of a sudden we like disregard all of that. It's like, no, nothing went wrong. She's doing great. She's doing all the things, just the literally the structure of this system is not made for her. And you don't want to follow it then, because you're going to end up going somewhere just to say yes for the timeline. If you gave her one more year, she could have a totally different spot, right? But that involves the college coaches also having conversations. Like, we still have money to give people when they're in their senior year, right? Like, I think of like the timetable has to shift, but that is absolutely right. I do think most athletes should choose where they're going, summer into fall, junior to senior year. And that's where they all belong. And so, I'd love to see there be different processes, but how the hell, I don't, I think of like, I hate to be someone that's like always, like complaining about things and like don't have a solution. So I get it. There's all these structures. You can't be like, you're in that pool, you're in that pool. There's complications to that. But at the very least, this idea of restructuring, like getting data, having conversations, people seeing where they stand, even having coaches being able to see like, you're not there now, so we're not going to go for you in this fall of your junior year, but we're going to check back in the summer because it looks like you're close. Like now you start having conversations with athletes as if you're not in tier 1 for us, you're in tier 2, and you could normalize things like that. And that would make people feel a hell of a lot more comfortable.
Right. Clear as kind.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, there's our September 1st talk. We said we'd do it. And there it was.
Yeah, there's a lot there, man. There's a lot there.
Yeah. So now we're about to hit crazy fall ball, but we're thinking of it as off season for our colleges and for our high school athletes. So we will probably in the next few weeks be talking a little bit more about now how do you keep getting better, which is what we like to talk about. So that's the goal of it. All right. Until next week, we'll see you then.
We appreciate you guys for listening to the podcast and making it possible that we can record this every week. So much so that we have a code, OGX Pod, that you can use on our shop to get 10% off all of our products. So just pop over to our website, click on shop, and then any of those products, put in OGX Pod and get 10% off today.